Welcome to Authors Review Books, where your favorite authors share the books they love. I am best-selling author J.G. Gates, author of over a dozen books. Most recently, you might have heard of my Dragons and Aces series. It's an enemies to lovers story about a badass dragon rider and a dashing biplane pilot from enemy nations. It has banter, it has spice, and if you loved Fourth Wing, it might be your next favorite dragon read. And the third book of the series is coming out very soon, so, check it out. Our featured new release today is Fury Bound. That's book 2 of the Wolves of Ruin series by Sable Sorensen. Here's the blurb. Revenge demands sacrifice. Don't miss this action-packed, jaw-dropping, dark, and romantic sequel to Direbound. Crowned by destiny, consumed by vengeance. Against all odds, Maren Cooper has inherited the crown and a deadly war. As the kingdom of Nocturna splinters under the weight of generations of lies, it is up to Maren, her bonded direwolf Anassa, and their allies to bring the country back from the brink. But the commoners, the bonded, and the nobles are distrustful of the new queen, and Maren is caught in a deadly game of politics. Meanwhile, Maren's beloved younger sister, Selah, is more at risk than ever. Confusingly, the one person Maren can trust is Stark Therion, the dark, dangerous alpha she thought hated her as much as she loathed him. Yet, his loyalty is unshakable, his presence is intoxicating, and with his guidance, Maren can seize an unthinkable level of power. With enemies closing in and shadows stirring in her dreams, Maren stands to lose her kingdom and her heart. Blood will spill, bonds will break, fate will be tested. And that is Fury Bound, Book 2 of the Wolves of Ruin series by Sable Sorensen, which came out May 5th. And now let's welcome our guest. Kait Ballenger is an award-winning author of dark romantasy and paranormal romance. She is obsessed with tales of morally gray, sometimes villainous heroes, and can't resist a spicy redemption arc. When Kait's not busy writing kinky paranormal fantasy, she can be usually found with her nose buried in someone else's naughty books. She lives with her husband and 2 adorable sons in Florida's Bible Belt and will gladly use that belt to whip you. Kait, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're with us today. So, first of all, I want to talk about you. You have a book that just came out. So
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the book that just came out is Beautiful Redeemer. It is the 3rd book and the final book in my original Sinners trilogy. And so there's been a lot of build up to this one. It is dark romantasy. It's Why Choose, a romance between Lucifer, the angel of death, and our heroine who we've been following since book 1, Charlotte, and who's now immortal. And so it's like a crazy apocalyptic battle plus Why Choose romance all rolled into one.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I think last time you were here, we spoke about, I think it was book 2, and you were telling me a little bit about the Lucifer character, and it just,
Yes.
I don't know, it just sounded so fun, like the whole dynamic and the world and everything. So this is wrapping up the series then. Now it's a completed series, correct?
Yes, yeah. So this is the final book in this trilogy about these characters. I am currently working on like a spin-off version because the question I get from readers all the time is like if they've read book 1, they know that Lucifer and the other 7 deadly sins are these billionaire celebrities who have taken over New York City, and the other 7 deadly sins are Lucifer's siblings and they're big secondary characters throughout the series. So everybody wants to know, are there going to be books about the other sinners? Are we going to get to read about lust and greed and gluttony and all the others? And the answer is yes. I am doing a spinoff with the other sinners, but for the main trilogy focusing on Lucifer, Charlotte, and now Azrael, this is the final book in the series.
I love that. What a way, like super fun way to tie all the different series together. But like all of those just sound fun. Like every one you list off, you're like, ooh, that sounds fun. Like Gluttony, a series about gluttony, Lust, obviously. Like, okay, these all sound fun. So
Yeah. I'm very excited to like write the sibling spin-off books. I don't think they're gonna be like full trilogy arcs in the way that like Lucifer's story ended up being. But I'm definitely gonna do like one book about Lust, and then like we're gonna see where things go from there and like which other ones I'm gonna do. I have tentative plans for a few of them.
That's cool. Well, even if they were standalones, that's kind of a fun way into the series too, because somebody could just read the one about Lust and then be like, "Oh, it's connected to this trilogy," and then they can come into the main trilogy, and
Yes, yeah, that's the hope. So I'm hoping that new readers will find the spin-offs and the readers of the main trilogy will also be able to enjoy these other characters who they've been falling in love with throughout the course of the series.
yeah. Oh, that's so neat. I love that. I love that structure. That sounds like a lot of fun. So very cool. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. And I believe this is authors review books, right? So I think you had a book you were going to review. So what book do you want to review for us today?
Yeah, so the book I'm going to review is actually not out yet. So this will be a sort of mini sneak peek into what's going on behind the scenes. It is The Bone Singer by Abigail Owen, and it comes out on September 1st. It is a what I would call like a young adult, new adult paranormal novel, and it is a lot of fun, and I'm very excited to talk about it and that I got to read it early.
Yeah, I mean, I love that we're getting such an early sneak peek. There are probably a lot of readers out there who are like dying to read this
Yes.
book, and like you kind of got the hookup. You got to read it like way early, so that's
Yes.
very
Well,
cool.
I actually played freelance editor on this book, so like before it was turned into Abigail's editor at Entangled. So I have all the scoops on this one, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
That is awesome. So yeah, and you're very multi-talented, right? To be doing that as well. So very cool. So tell us a little bit about this book. I mean, maybe set the stage with the series so we know what is that's about, and then just let us know like what's this story about. Quick summary.
Yeah, so The Bone Singer is a perfect book if you have been wanting to read something that has that sort of like teen paranormal sitcom feel of like a Buffy or Teen Wolf or like those sorts of older shows, and you've been wanting something in book form that kind of has that similar like cinematic paranormal feel, like that's The Bone Singer. So the story follows three heroines. There's one main heroine that the book focuses on, but we get multiple character POVs throughout this story about three girls who live in a small mountain town that's very insular, and they're trying to solve some murder related mysteries. And paranormal antics ensue, and it is very fun and creepy at times, and just a really good read.
Awesome. So it is contemporary. It's not. It's a genre would be like contemporary paranormal, right?
Yes, it would be
Yeah.
like a contemporary paranormal. There's definitely magic in the story. There's paranormal elements that come into play, but it takes place in our contemporary world and universe.
Okay. And what are some of the tropes that are in there that readers might be into?
Mm. So like it would be young women as sleuths, right? Like, like
Love it.
like the amateur sleuth is definitely a big trope in there. There's a little bit of enemies to lovers between the hero and the heroine of the story because there is a romance. Um there's lots of secrets between the characters, and found sisterhood, found like family sort of thing, and witches and magic, right?
I love all those things. That sounds great. So you mentioned this romance, but
Mhm.
more on the young adult side. So no spice. We're talking zero spice. Is that correct?
It would be relatively low on the spice scale, I would say. There's some kissing, but there's not anything too crazy happening on the page. The heroines of the book are all about like 17, 18 years old, so on that upper YA like end of the spectrum. And but so yeah, not a lot of spice, but just enough to make it fun and romantic.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. And then character-wise, so you mentioned there's 3 heroines. Is there like a main character that really jumped out at you the most or that you really connected with?
So the main character of the stories is Thalia, but there's 3 girls that the plot really focuses on, and my favorite of the 3 is actually Cammy. She's one of the other heroines, and what I particularly liked about her character is that when she's introduced, she kind of shows up as that like stereotypical like popular girl, right? Like you think she's very like superficial and vain, and to some degree she is, but I loved the way her character unfolded because there's just so much more to her than that, and I really liked seeing her get like deeper as a character throughout the course of the book.
Oh yeah, that's great. And kind of the 3 kind of like focus characters is kind of fun too, because like if you don't latch onto one, like there's probably going to be one that you latch onto a little bit.
Yes,
So I
yeah,
like
and
that.
and the whole cast of characters in this is a lot of fun, and because it's set in a small mountain town, it's got that sort of like small town like paranormal vibe that makes me almost think of like back to like True Blood Sookie Stackhouse days, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like you meet all these like side characters that you end up liking and wanting to know more about, and I think that's a lot of fun, particularly in a paranormal series where you're trying to figure out what creatures exist and what don't, and so that's very fun as a reader.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. What other books did this one remind you of a little bit? Were there others where it was like if you love this book, you're gonna love this one?
It's Sookie Stackhouse in particular comes to mind because if you
Okay.
love Sookie Stackhouse in the True Blood series, right? Because it's got that small town feel, it's got paranormal elements and like and the mystery sleuth element to it. This is a good comparison. It is younger, right? Because the Sookie Stackhouse series is fully adult, right? Like Sookie's, I can't remember her exact age, but I think she's like in her late 20s, like almost in her 30s,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these heroines are much younger, and it definitely has more of that like the craft, like teen witch vibe to it. Um, but it has similar elements that definitely make me think of True Blood Sookie Stackhouse for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's very fun. And what were the things about it that were like different than anything else out there, or that like really set it apart for you?
Mm. I think part of what sets it apart is without revealing like too many spoilers, I think that
Sure.
as the magic comes into it, the magic elements of it, I think are really well done and really unique. And I think anybody who's read Abigail's other books, like The Games Gods Play and, The Liar's Crown, etc., knows that Abigail's really great at world building, and so like that like I know whenever I pick up one of her books, like the fantasy paranormal elements are always going to be like on point. And so I think that's what sets it apart for sure.
Yeah, we love some solid world building, right? That's always
Yes.
great. Um, what about the writing style? So is it first person or third person? What can you tell me about how it's written?
It's first person, and there's
Okay.
different character POVs and different chapters, so we get some of the heroines, an occasional POV from the hero, and it's a lot of fun with the multicast characters because you're seeing that sort of small town from multiple different angles, which I really enjoyed.
Okay, so multiple first person POVs.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, gives you kind of a mosaic effect. That is fun when that
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it for sure.
And it sounds like she must do a good job capturing those different voices of all those characters.
Yeah, and making them distinct enough, like that, you know exactly which character you're following at which point, and there's always, their name at the start of the chapter, and so you know where you are and who you're with at any given point.
Yeah, that's great. And as a writer, I always think that's a little bit ambitious writing, lots of POVs.
It is definitely ambitious to write lots of POVs. I know, like, for me as a writer, like, throughout the original Sinner series, right, like, there is dual POV, and it is dual, first person between Charlotte and Lucifer, and then we add in a third person, Azrael, at the end of book 2, and I don't think that's too much of a spoiler at this point since we're all the way into book 3, and so
Sure.
by the third book in the series, I was juggling 3 first person point of views, which is a lot of fun as an author, but you also have to be very stringent about keeping track that the reader knows what's going on with each of those character arcs at any given time, and I feel like Abigail absolutely nailed that.
Awesome. Awesome. But yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. So everybody in September, if you you're gonna have to wait till September, but
Yeah,
you
it
know, maybe you're listening to this later and it's already September. You can go pick it up right now. But
yes.
great. So I have to ask, of course, how many stars out of 5?
Well, I would have to give it 5 stars because, like, especially since I helped edit it, I'm like, "Of course I think it's perfect."
You're
So
like 1 star. No, just kidding.
no, I really
Yeah.
do
Okay.
genuinely think that it is a great book. Like, I always enjoy Abigail's stories, and I think this one is no exception. It's different from some of her backlist titles, but I think that readers are gonna like the changes and like the shakeup from her usual stuff.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, and especially the insider perspective as somebody who worked on it. That's so fun. I want to transition a little bit and ask you, well, you're here with us, a couple questions just about your author journey. I know some readers are interested in just the lives and the journeys of authors, and also some of our listeners are um, authors or aspiring authors in their own right. So it's always fun to kind of dig in a little bit to some of those things. So um, tell me a little bit about your writing journey. Like, how did you get started and how did you find your way to being published?
Yeah, so I'll say I started out way younger than most authors start. I think that sometimes when I tell my story, people can be a little intimidated because they're like, I had to start back then. And I'm like, I really started way earlier than most because my first book was published when I was 21. So that was quite some time ago. I'm now 35 for reference. So I have been in the industry a very long time. And I first started writing, you know, when I was still in high school at that point, and it was just like a hobby because I really liked to read. And I remember, you know, getting into my first year of college, like sitting in my dorm room, like typing out like my first book that shall never see the light of day. It wasn't very great, right? Like, and
Mhm.
so a lot of those early skills like were looking up different forums and going to at that point RWA meetings and like which is Romance Writers of America, and like just learning everything I could about the craft of writing. And then it was shortly before I started I had planned to go get my Master's of Fine Arts in Writing and get my MFA, and it was shortly before that that I ended up with my agent, and then ended up getting published and getting my contract. And so I was already contracted and getting published by the time I started working on my Master's in Writing, but I still wanted to keep, you know, learning about my craft and that sort of thing. And the rest has kind of been history from there. It was you know, I just kind of went all in with that being my journey very early on. I found my thing and I knew it was what I wanted to do. And I know that's an oddity story because most people that I know in the writing industry have come in a bit later, you know, once they've already held other careers and sort of transitioned over time. But yeah, I just started out very young and did the whole traditional query thing and then traditional publishing, and then now I do both traditional and indie. And yeah, it's been a long journey.
So the advice, kids, is go ahead and get published when you're 21, and then when you're 35 and still super young, then you can be like an industry veteran and, you know, still be young. I mean, like, that's great. That's a good way to do it.
Exactly, that's the way to go. Like, and
Yeah.
it does come up frequently because 'cause I'll be like, "Yeah, I've been doing this for, like, how many years now?" And people are like, "What?" Like,
Start doing the math like, wait a
"Wow."
minute. Yeah,
But when I
absolutely.
started, I was like a literal baby within the industry, like, there was nobody else my age
Like,
around.
oh, it's Kate. Look at
I know,
her.
she's
She
so
published a book.
cute.
Oh yeah, that's great. And you and I would have been buddies because I also, when I was in college, I was working on a screenplay. So I was like freshman in college, and it was
Yeah,
like everyone's going out to party. I was like, guys, I got to work on my screenplay. I'm sorry. I know it's a
exactly.
Friday night. I know it's a Friday night, but I'm gonna win an Oscar for this thing. It was the most probably god awful thing ever put on paper, I'm sure, but but I was very serious about it, and I learned, I grew, it helped. It was a stepping stone, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it was the same with my first book. I look back now and I'm like, "Oh, that was very bad," but I was very serious about it.
Yeah, I couldn't look at mine. It would hurt my eyes, I think, but or my feelings. I don't know, but yeah, I would not look back at it. But yeah, it dead serious, and yeah, I knew that eventually I was gonna be, very serious writer. So yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then, so in the querying process, like how long did that? Do you remember how long it took you? Because sometimes, I mean, especially now, the querying process can take years because sometimes some agents take months to get back to you and stuff. Like, was that a pretty quick process at that time, or how did that go for you?
I started querying with the really bad first book that I had written
Hmm.
and got lots and lots of rejections, and I think I went on querying that for, I wanna say, about a year at that point where I was just like, "This is not going anywhere, so I'm gonna write something different." And so, it was at that point, I was writing YA fantasy, and in retrospect, it was, like, early romantasy stuff because I kept getting told that it was too adult to be YA, um
Yeah,
and but, like,
right.
the market for romantasy then was just, it didn't exist. If you were going to be writing adult, like, romance with fantasy elements, it was gonna be paranormal romance. And if you were gonna be writing, like, high fantasy, right, with romance, it was gonna be in the YA section, and there better not be too much, like, Sarah J. Maas level stuff going on because that ACOTAR wasn't even a thing then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this was some time ago, right? And you really didn't have a whole lot of options. And so because I kept being told that, like, the YA I was working on was a little too upper YA and, like, a little too spicy to be in the YA genre, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and try and pivot into writing paranormal romance. So I wrote my first paranormal romance, and then the querying process for that was actually very short. I had just really started querying it when I went to a Romance Writers of America conference in New York City, and I was on a literal elevator ride with Mary Sue Seymour, who at that time, she's since passed, but who at that time was the head of the Seymour Agency. And she did not rep my specific genre, but I knew she had co-agents who did, so I just said hello and introduced myself to her. I knew an author who was repped by her, so it was kind of like a quick and easy, like, "Hey, I know your author," right? Like, and just said hello. Um, she told me to query her co-agent Nicole Resinetti, gave me her card and info, and then I did post conference, and Nicole requested my manuscript shortly thereafter, and within 24 hours of sending it to her, she had called me up on the phone and said, "I want to represent you," and she has been my agent ever since. So
Wow. That's amazing, within 24 hours that she jumped on it that
yeah,
fast.
she told me after the fact, she said, "I opened the manuscript on my phone that morning and started reading and did not stop until I'd finished." And she's like,
Wow.
"That's how I
Wow.
knew I had to sign you." And I was like, "Okay, great."
Wow. Well, that's pretty good. I mean, not, you certainly grabbed her attention and held it, but you also did the literal elevator pitch. Like,
Yes, yeah.
that's the elevator pitch. That's good.
Yeah, so my advice is prepare your elevator pitch and be prepared to make it on an actual elevator.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they say that, but like, how many of us really feel like, we're going to be in the elevator with the agent? Like,
Yes.
yeah. How many elevator rides did you have to take before an agent got in and you got to pitch them?
Right?
Like Kate's been in the elevator all day long. She's waiting for an agent. Yeah. But it
Well,
worked. It worked.
honestly, I was in and out of that elevator so many times. This was at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square, and so like there was a lot of floors there, and so there was a lot of elevator rides for that to happen.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. Well, it worked out. Oh my gosh. Um, so now, okay, fast forward to now in your career, or I guess along the way as well.
Mhm.
How do you choose what to write next? Because I feel like, for some people it's like, um, oh my gosh, what should I write? So, like writers who are starting, it can be overwhelming. Like, what should I write? Or I have so many ideas. Which idea do I pick? So, like, how does that shake out for you as you're thinking about your next project or series?
Yeah, I think it's a different answer for every writer, right? I don't think what works just for me on this is necessarily going to be the right answer for other people because I think a lot of it comes down to like why you're writing. Because when you're just starting out, if you're writing because writing is your joy, right, and you're wanting to chase that passion, my answer would be to write whatever project is calling to you the most, right? I think that would be good advice is like chase that. But then once you're in the later stages of your career, you kind of have like different considerations of like what project you're going to pursue, right? Like for example, I'd been writing, multiple books, mini series before I got to writing the original Sinner trilogy. But original Sinner and the books that have followed have been my biggest creative success, right? So they've been the biggest success for me reader wise, monetarily, like a number of things. So for me, the question then becomes, okay, how can I double down on this and like do things that are similar but different, right? In a way that makes me creatively happy, and like gives me joy as a writer, but also like keeps my readers happy because like I got bills to pay, right? Like
Yeah.
so I think it's like a marriage of art and business when you're in the later stages of your career. But I still think fundamentally you have to prioritize your own joy as a creative because that comes across to readers on the page. And if you're not enjoying what you're writing and what you're working on, readers are going to know that. And I honestly, truly believe that the reason Original Center was my biggest success so far, um, is that it was a passion project. It was something that I wanted to do. It was meant to be like just a book that filled all my id things like in one like novel. And so I just let myself kind of play and have creative fun with it and it took off from there cuz I think readers can feel that when they're reading if you're really truly enjoying yourself as a writer.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's true. You have to balance all of those things, right? Because there's, you do want to do, especially if you're getting some success, you want to double down on it. You want to like
Yes.
figure out how to capitalize on it and keep the momentum going. But at the same time, you can't destroy like that spark of creativity because
Yeah.
there's always this a smart business thing that you could theoretically do that might not be feeding your inner creative. Like, if you're an indie published person, it's like it would be a great if you could crank out a book a month, right?
Yeah.
And write a 21 book series and crank them out, once every 2 weeks or once a month. And it's like I see that, like I could not do that, right? I would be
Yeah.
miserable. I would hate it. The books would be garbage, and right,
Yeah.
and it would not fit my lifestyle, it would not fit my family, it would not fit anything. So it's like, okay, that sounds terrible. It would be very smart on one level for me to do that, but on another level, it's like, no, I could not and would not, and it just wouldn't work for me. But some people, right? Some people do it, and they're like, boom, they're making a lot of money, they're very successful, they're growing at an astronomical pace, and like, good for them. But you
Yeah,
have to
it really
balance.
comes down to like knowing yourself as a creative and also knowing yourself as a business person and being able to find the cross section between those two things is like That's where the good advice lies, because not all
Yeah.
advice in the industry is for all writers. I think we don't talk about that enough. Like, we hear, oh, you should be writing a book a month, like, or or X number of books per year in order to make this indie income or what have you. And there's as many success stories as there are for each, piece of advice, there's just as many stories of people who that advice didn't work for. So you have to kind of pick and choose what's going to work for you and your abilities and your style of being a writer and your individual goals, because we all have different goals out of our writing too. Like, not success does not look the same for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about that also in terms of like, yeah, why you're writing, what your real goals are. Like, so I'm in a position right now where I like kind of same as you, like the series I have out now that I'm about to release the third book on, is by far the most successful one I've had so far, gathering the most attention, the most readers, everything like that. I definitely want to continue and keep that momentum going for that series. But
Mhm.
also at the same time, I have twins. My two oldest kids are 12, and they're at like kind of that magical reading age. And I'm kind of like, I I do want to get another book out in the world. I do have one middle grade book, but it's like actually I
Yeah.
do want to get a book out for them while they're at that magical age, because that's never going to come again. So
Yeah.
I have a middle grade book that's like, or it could be split into a series. It's like close to being done. So like somehow I'm going to find time to wrap that up so I can get that
Yeah.
out in the next year or so, so that they can enjoy. And it's like, it's not the smart thing business wise to divert my attention that way. But like in terms of, just what my values and what I care about, and just to have that experience and share that with them, like, that's important to me. So
Yeah, yeah, and it really comes down to what's your priority, right? And if your priority is like, this is important to me, it's like, this is the one time I can have this experience with my kids and I've got this story that I can do for them, like, yeah, of course that needs to take precedence over, like, like any good business decision, right? Like, because I think that if we only think about the business side, then all the joy gets taken out of like, all the creativity starts to dwindle, right? And I've seen it happen in the industry. So many writers who like really double down on just making the good business decisions, and it might work out monetarily, right? But it kills the creative joy and you hit burnout fast. But on the flip side, if you only ever think about like what is creatively fun and never even worry about the market or like how you're going to sell your books, right? Like, that's not how you make a living as a writer either, right? So it's like that marriage of the two. And I think what you're saying makes sense, right? Like, you've got this series that's doing commercially well. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to take this break to do this one thing because it's a limited time period. And then I'll go back to the thing that's working well, right? Like, that makes total business sense to me. It's the marriage in both those things.
yeah, totally. And I think for some writers too, even like just embrace the fact that maybe it's not going to be a commercial success. Like if you just have one book, like you wrote one book that you cared about, it's your pet
Yes.
project. You're not even like, you're not going to write in a series. You don't have like 10 other books that you're going to quickly crank out after that. Like for that person, like maybe embrace, like just like,
Yeah.
make that book, make it the best it can be, pour your energy into it, pour your resources into marketing it. But like, yeah, not everybody has to have a career as a, like everybody wants to, it'd be great to like live off your income as a writer and stuff like that. But like, not everybody has to, it's, I don't know. It's like, there's different solutions for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, like, obviously I'm a writer, but I wear many hats. I'm also a freelance editor, and then I also teach in a MFA program for creative writers. And one of the things I tell my students a lot, because a lot of them will come into my program and they automatically are like, "Hey, yeah, I want to be a full-time writer." But then when you start to probe with more questions, you actually find out the realities of being a full-time writer are not something that they actually want, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because the realities of being being a full-time writer are very different than the dream of being a full-time writer. And,
Hmm.
and I have to have a talk with a lot of them and be like, you're just as valid as an author. You're just as valid as a writer, even if this is not your full-time career. If you're just doing this part-time or even as a hobby, that still counts, right? Like it doesn't have to be full-time for everybody. Like so many people maintain full-time jobs and are still amazing writers, right? Like,
Yeah, it's true. And I'm in a weird position because I have been a full-time writer in the past, but now I'm the executive director of a nonprofit theater, which I love. And so I have the weird position of having a day job that I really love and enjoy. And so that's a weird thing to navigate as well, as just balancing the time that I spend writing versus doing that. But for me, it's a good balance because I actually really enjoy my day job. So
yeah.
most of my life, I've been dying to get out of a day job and like dying to just only write. And now it's kind of weird because I'm like, I actually enjoy both.
Yeah, and some people get so much energy and and creative ideas from having their day jobs that I'm like
It's true.
they're actually better writers for it. So like I think there's sort of this myth in the writing and publishing industry that like you're only a valid writer if it's your full-time job, and that's just silly and not true.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's totally true. Um, Connecting with readers, what's your, like that often that's a very difficult thing. Like once you've scaled all the mountains of,
Mhm.
attaining good craft and getting an agent or not getting an agent and publishing yourself, but then getting the books out into the world. And then I think what most of us find is then like, ooh, there's another big mountain ahead of you, and that is connecting with readers. So what have you found that has worked well for you to connect with readers?
Yeah, I guess this is probably kind of old schoolish advice at this point, but I still feel like the best thing you can do to keep reaching readers and readers like time and time again is to have a newsletter. Because once you have their email address, like you get to keep reaching out to them unless they unsubscribe. And, I've been around in the industry long enough to see the rise and fall of several different social media platforms as the predominant form of like where writers should be. Like I remember when Twitter, or like now X, was like the big thing in writing, and like that did not last, obviously,
Hmm.
for many reasons.
Yeah.
But like there's always going to be new social media platforms or varying things that people are trying. And you kind of just have to look beneath all the noise and see what's working and what sticks. And for me, that has been maintaining my regular newsletter. So I take, sign up sheets to every conference that I attend, every event that I'm at, to, get readers who see me at these in-person things. The links are in the back of my books, whether they're my trad pub books or my indie published books. There's links to my newsletter on my website. So I'm catching readers from all these different spaces. There's links to it on, in my social media accounts. So I'm getting readers filtering into this place. And then I'm able to keep reaching them time and time again to say, hey, I have a new release, or like, this book's coming out in audio, or any number of things that I want to share with them. And I think that value of being able to reach them with a touch of a button helps you build that sort of fandom that you need to follow you throughout your career. Because you don't want to be restarting every time a new social media platform comes around, or every time you switch to a new publisher or try a new genre. You don't want to have to rebuild. So you want to have something that's like a stable foundation. And for me, that's reaching out to them via my newsletter.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree about the value of a newsletter. It is really nice. And it is also nice once you build it to a certain point to just have, um, some people who are engaged and who you can sort of marshal to do a few things like, oh gosh, I would love to get some more reviews on this book. And like, maybe a handful will be like, oh yeah, I read that and I didn't review it, so like a few of them will
Yeah.
go out and review it, or you have a new book come out and some people will buy it. And, just to be able to have some people who are like on the journey with you and are like, "Oh, you need help with this? Like, cool, I'll share, share this graphic if you would. Like this thing is coming out, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I'll share that." So yeah, that is a nice feeling when you start to get like build that up a little bit and have your people, where you can reach them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have readers who are on my newsletter who will come to my signings now who have followed me since back when I first started writing with Harlequin many years ago, right? And so like they've read all my books at this point. And like there's not a huge number of them that have been with me that long, but the ones that are, I'm like, these are like my loyal little crew of like they're slowly telling more and more people, have you read Kate's books? And like that word of mouth and like building up those relationships with readers is really important. And so I think a newsletter is a way to do that because it's a way I can stay in contact with them in between releases or when I have a new release.
Yeah, and to keep those core people engaged, right? Because otherwise you might have that person, they read your book, they loved it, they would love to engage with you more,
Mm.
but like they don't have a way to do it. If you don't have the newsletter, right? If you have the newsletter, like now they can be engaged with you. So I would never not
Yeah.
have a newsletter. It's good.
And readers are so much more interested in what's going on in writers' like lives and with them than I think that most writers think. Because from our perspective, we're like, we're just normal people. We're not that interesting, right? But like, readers want to know what you're listening to on your playlist to get inspiration or like what you're working on now, even if it's not something that might end up published eventually. Like, they want to see that sort of behind the scenes content, and a newsletter is a little way to give them that.
Yeah, that's totally true. And I think it's also an example of the way that yeah, I mean, we may, as a writer, you might be on a lot of people's newsletters, but it
Mhm.
also makes me think that like there are some readers that engage in ways that maybe you or I wouldn't engage. Like, for example, I wouldn't necessarily, or I have not bought $100 book box before, with goodies and a special edition book. Or, I mean, I just haven't. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I haven't. But like, there's lots of readers who have like bought my books boxes and love it. And that's just like part because they're like building a collection of
Yeah.
special edition books, which I'm not necessarily doing, So,
Mhm.
um, I don't know. Yeah, just to recognize. So I think somebody might say, well, I don't know. I'm not on any author's email list, so I'm not going to create an email list. It's like, but there are people who want to be on your email list, maybe. So like, yeah, you should do it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's so true because like not every reader is going to have the same book purchasing or buying habits that you do, right? Because, like, for me, like, if I buy a book in ebook or, paperback or even audio, I'm not going to buy another copy of it in another format. I'm
Hmm.
not that type of reader. I just don't do that. But there are
Yeah.
so many readers who tell me, oh, I listened to your book in audio and then I loved it enough that I had to go buy this paperback and then I had to get the special edition and X, Y, and Z versions, or even just the number of versions there are of like bigger books like, Akotar and Fourth Wing, right? And
Yeah.
like so many different special editions. And like I get the love of special editions. Like I have versions with the sprayed edges, but I don't buy a new version every time a new version comes out, but there are some readers who would love to buy that same book just in different, variations and covers because, like, that is part of their collection. And, like, more power to them, but I am not that, like, reader.
Right. Right. Yeah. But it's great to find those ways to accommodate that person and say like, okay, I can find a way to connect with you, or I can
Yes.
find a way to fill that need or that desire that you have. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
No, that's great. Okay, so I have one more question before we wrap up. Um, do you have a piece of wisdom, advice that you would give to writers who are starting off or authors that are kind of trying to, get the flywheel going? What's your big piece of advice?
I think it's twofold. Don't lose the joy, right? Because I think we all have that sort of like excitement starting out of like, oh, writing is so fun. I'm like, I get to be so creative. So try to hold on to that. Don't let it fall to the wayside as you continue along your writing journey. But also don't rush through the early stages. I think a lot of writers who are just starting out are like very eager to be like, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to put out the very first book that I've ever written. I'm not going to worry about getting an editor. I'm just going to like straight to indie publishing it, or like, X, Y, and Z things, because they feel like they're running out of time, or like they're in a hurry to like, hit a certain part of the market, or just to like be an official author. And like, I just like, if I could give them any piece of advice, I would just say to them, if you write, you are already a writer, right? Like, so you're not in a rush. It's not a race. So like, don't rush through those early days, because I think there can be so much value in the lessons you learn early on in your writing career that like, you'll wish you had like taken all that in, like, and paid closer attention once you're further along.
So true. I definitely remember that sense of urgency when I was first starting off, right? Like whatever it was I was working on, whether it was that first screenplay we talked about, or,
Mhm.
a book or whatever, and think like, I got to get this out. Like I got to get it into the world. And it's like,
Yes.
no, yeah, you do have time. Like you will get it out, but there will also be another book, and there will be another one after that. And I think
Yes.
the longer I do it, the more I get used to just like trusting the process, And the other thing is true too. I have readers that are, the next book in the series, like, when's the next book coming out? When's the next book coming out? And it's like, soon, but not too soon, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
not going to rush it. Right? I'm going to go through the process. It's going to be ready when it's ready, and it'll be fantastic, and maybe another month, but it's going to be great,
Right? And that's the thing, is that when you get into the later parts of your career and you actually have deadlines, right? Like there will be
Yeah.
times when there are actually urgent things that you do have to get done on a schedule. So like, enjoy those early days of not having that sort of pressure on you.
Yes, so true. So true. Well, Kate, where can people find you? Where can people find you and your books and connect with you?
Yeah, so readers can find me at my website at www.kateballenger.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there. And then I'm also on TikTok as at Kait Ballenger, and Instagram as at Kate.Ballenger. So easy handles to find. And those are my main two platforms. And yeah, I love to connect with readers. So come give me a follow and chat with me.
Awesome. And we'll definitely put a link to your website in the show notes and everything, so people can find you that way. So awesome. Well, Kate, thank you so much for hanging out today. It was a blast talking with you as always.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.